Hi, welcome to the Coda Counselor. I am Joy Plody, and my name sign is Joy, and I am a licensed counselor and also a child of deaf adults, a Coda. And as someone who is involved with both the hearing and the deaf community, I strive often to try to kind of bridge those two different worlds and advocate for people who are unheard. My journey into counseling has been a long one, and I thought a lot about my upbringing and my parents as I went through school. At the time I went through school, my parents had already passed, but I got a lot of reflection done during that time. Uh, While growing up in a deaf house, my mother had a lot of triumphs. My parents were very involved in the deaf community. They were wonderful community advocates in the deaf world. And they also struggled with intergenerational trauma, the trauma of deafness, and the associated symptoms of that trauma. So there was one conversation that I often reflected on while I was in school, and this has to do with the intergenerational trauma. My mother had cancer before she passed, and while she was getting treatment and she was going to different hospitals and rehab centers, I would go and visit her almost every day because she was very lonely. She didn't have anybody to talk to while she was in these places. So I would go and I would sit with her hours and hours and we would talk, talk, talk. And um, during one of those conversations, I remember her getting a little bit sad. And she was talking about how she wished I was born deaf. And this is not a conversation that is unique to me. This is a conversation that many codas, have reported very similar conversations of their own. But my mom said, well, yeah, I wish you were born deaf. And I happened to be sitting with my feet up on her bed and I kind of, pushed her leg and I said, well, that's mean, Mom. I said, that's not nice. I said, it's so hard to be deaf. And why would you want me to be deaf? I know you struggled, struggled, struggled. Schools are hard to find, blah, 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 blah. I said, why would you want me to be deaf? And she said, if you had been born deaf, my mother would have learned sign. I looked at her and I said, no. I said, Grandma would not have learned sign for me. If she didn't learn sign for you, she would have never learned sign for me. And my mother was the sweetest, the nicest, the kindest, the most gentle woman you ever met. Everybody loved my mom. She was so sweet. So I was a little bit shocked at what she said. She said, well, everybody loves you, Joy. If you had been born deaf, they would have learned for you. And what that meant for me later on, I understood as her intergenerational trauma. She felt that because her mother didn't learn to communicate with her, that she wasn't lovable or that she wasn't loved enough. And so during those years of her being depressed or sad or any of those other things, that was her core belief about herself, was that she was unlovable or that she wasn't good enough to be respected and to be communicated with. So during or through this channel, I hope to shed light on some of the complexities that this type of belief would bring to the Coda community, what that meant for me, that my mother, that was her belief, and how do you teach someone to love themselves when you don't love you? So being a Coda is complex, and there are many struggles that Codas have that are overlooked. There needs to be some conversation about this in the deaf community. And I think that by opening up our struggles between Codas and deaf people, if we work together, perhaps we can give more information and more voice to the hearing community at large. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw from my experience. I am a trauma-focused therapist, and so I use different trauma-focused treatments. DBT, which is dialectical behavioral therapy. I use IFS, internal family systems. I use EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. And I use brain spotting, and I use different trauma-focused treatments that I was taught in graduate school. Those are my favorites, but I do love several of the other ones too. So we'll be delving into topics such as intergenerational trauma, language deprivation, and the mental health of the deaf and Coda communities. So this isn't just about awareness, it's about empowerment and action. So I invite you to join the journey of education, of advocacy, and of healing. Together, we can explore more and different ways to dismantle different barriers, to celebrate our successes, and foster a more inclusive and supportive environment for deaf and Codas everywhere. So whether you're deaf, you are a Coda, you are a hearing parent, it doesn't matter. If you're just someone who is wanting to have more information about this world, if you are, enthusiastic about the deaf world and, changing things and social justice, well, there's a place for you here. So let's amplify our voices. We'll share stories. We will work together towards a better future for everybody. Take care, and remember, be good to yourself.